Right, welcome back. So in this video, what we're going to do is work on the animations. So we've gotten movement, but our character moves uh, in the same position. She does flip. That was provided by the character controller 2D, so that's good. Um, but she doesn't actually animate the jump or running or standing still. So we're going to start with idle. Idle is essentially the base animation of the character. And depending on what character you chose, the idle is going to be more or less noticeable. It's fairly subtle in this one that I chose, but we're gonna start with that one and then work towards run and jump. So first of all, I need to get the animation window. So I'm going to go up to Window, Animation, and choose Animation, not Animator, Animator Parameter, Animation. And that's going to give me this free floating little panel, and I'm going to tuck it in here beside my game. It doesn't really matter where you tuck it. All right, so as you might guess, I want to animate the player. So I'm going to make sure I have the player selected here. Then I'm going to go down to here where it says to begin animating player. Make sure you're doing player. Create an animator animation clip. So let's do that. And that's going to start a little wizard. And I want to, it's going to put stuff in assets right now. So I want to create a new folder for all this to go in called animations. There we go. And then inside of that, I'm going to start off with player underscore idle. So this is the idle animation. We're going to create additional ones soon. So one thing you want to make sure when you're creating new animations is make sure that the thing that the animation is on is selected. So make sure player is selected. Okay. Then I'm going to add the pictures that make up the idle animation. So that's in my sprites folder, player folder. So here's idle 1 down to idle 10. So it looks like I have 10 images. You may have more or less depending on what you're using. Then I'm going to grab those and I'm going to drag them. So if you don't get the green plus here, that means you didn't have your player selected and you're not allowed to add it. So if that happens, go over and select your player and then you should be able to add items. So you'll notice that these are really close together. So you can kind of see it, her head bobs up and down as the animation. So I want to spread these out a little bit. So I'm going to grab that one and just pull it out. Maybe, let's see what that looks like. Still a little fast, so I'm going to spread it out a little further. Maybe something like that. And have nice, nice little slow movement. And maybe it can go even a little slower. Notice that you can play with these afterwards once you get in the game to sort of figure out what kind of makes sense. There we go, a little slow bob of the head. So that's the player idle animation. It's not attached. Well, it actually is attached to the player. So if you look in the animations folder here, you'll notice that two things got created, the player idle animation and the player controller, and this should match the name of the thing. So if I click on the controller, you notice you get this picture. And we're going to be playing with this this time. And essentially what you got was at the entry, the start of the program, the player is going to transition, that's what these little arrows and lines are, is going to transition into the player idle animation. So if I give my program a run, it should switch to a game here. You'll notice that my character is in the idle animation. That's because at the entry of the game, we started in idle animation. So as you might guess, as we add additional animations, we're going to have to add transitions to those animations. Okay, so I'm going to select my player again so that I have down here, and I'm going to create 2 more animations. So notice this was player idle. So I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to go to the little arrow to the side of this, and I'm going to create a new clip. And I'm going to make sure it's in the animations folder. And then I'm going to call this player run. Okay. So this is player run. I'm going to go over here and find my run animation. So that's 1 through 8. And I'll drag it over here. Spread this out a bit. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see what it looks like. There's my run. Notice you can, if it feels too slow, you can do enough run, but that's my running. That seems okay. So let me create the third one. New clip. We'll call this player jump. The reason we're putting player on the front of everything is because you may animate enemies at some point. You could also create folders as well. That would work too. So this one's empty. So let me find the jump animation, 1 through 10. And we'll spread this out a little bit. Maybe like that. Let's see what it looks like. Maybe a little quick. Let's pull it a little wider. And these you'll have to, yep, that's okay. We'll try that and see if that works. All right, we really can't tell until we get into the game and see it in action. So I'm going to close up my pictures here. And so you'll notice I have player idle animation, player jump animation, player run. So if I click on the controller, you'll notice that these got added. I'm going to organize them in this way, only because I know ahead what I'm doing here. And as you might guess, I'm going to build transitions between these. So on entry to the game, I want my character to be in player idle. At some point, if I start moving, I want to, like going left and right, I want to transition into my player run animation. And if I hit the space bar to jump, then I want to transition into player jump. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to select player idle and I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose make transition and I'm going to pull it down and connect it to player run. So this is a transition from player idle to player run. And what I'm really interested in is the transition itself. So I'm going to click on the transition. This is the state, but I'm more interested in the transition. So the transition has information in the inspector here, and I'm going to make a few changes. First of all, I'm going to unclick this one that says has exit time, and what you'll notice when I do that, and we'll talk about the condition here in a minute, and I'm going to change the transition duration to 0. And you'll notice what that changed is we're going to have a clean move from idle to player run. Before, when you have a transition duration, that means the two animations will actually blend. The end of one will blend into the beginning of the other, but I just want, in this case, to stop the idle, go straight to run. So that's why you get this clean sort of picture down below. You'll notice down below it says the transition needs at least one condition, or the exit time, which I turned off, to be valid. Because if you have an exit time, that means that it's over at that certain time. So otherwise it'll be ignored. So I'm going to add a condition. And this condition currently is not tied to anything, but it will be tied to our code. So if you look over here, where we're looking at layers, there's also a little tab for parameters. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to add some parameters. And these are essentially variables that are going to sort of connect our state transition diagram here with our code. So I'm going to first create a float, and I'm going to call it capital S speed. And it's important that whatever you call here, case sensitive, that you use it. And notice its default value is 0, which is perfectly fine. All right, so I've created a parameter. So I can go back over here and select my transition from idle to run. And I can add a condition. This is the condition for making the transition. To say if speed is greater than, and 0 means I'm not moving, so I'm just going to make a small number. So 0.01 means that I am moving. So if I was idle, not moving, and now I am moving, then I want to transition my animation into player run. And as you might guess, I want to transition back because I may stop running and go back to idle. So I'm going to right click on player run, make a transition going back. There it is. I'm going to select that transition. I'm going to turn off exit time. I'm going to change the duration to 0 so it happens immediately. And then I'm going to add a condition. And in this case, if the speed is less than that 0.01. So if I was moving and now I'm essentially going back to 0, then I want to go back to idle. Okay. Now, that should take care of those for a little bit. Now, the one to think about here is jump. When do I want to allow jump to happen? Well, I do want to allow jump to happen from idle. I do want to allow jump to happen from run. Essentially, any state that I'm in currently, I want to allow a jump. So you'll notice there's this little action down here called any state. So we can use that says, okay, no matter what I'm in, I can transition to jump. So let's make a transition from any state up until player jump. All right, so I'm going to make sure it has exit time is off. I'm going to change the duration time to 0. We may have to play with this a little bit, see if this works. Notice I need a condition. So notice jump really has nothing to do with speed, because I could be running and then jumping. So I'm going to add a new parameter over here. And it's going to be a Boolean. So either I'm jumping or I'm not jumping. So I'll call this is jumping. And this little checkbox, non-checked means it's false, checked means it's true. So we're going to start with false as its default. So I got that parameter, reselect my transition I'm interested in, and let's change our value here to say is jumping is true. So if it's true, then I'm allowed to jump. Okay, and now there's two more transitions that we're going to set up. One is happens when we're no longer jumping, and notice that I can transition to either idle or run from those. So let's set that up. So let's make a transition from player jump to idle. Okay, select that. We'll get rid of the exit time. We'll get rid of the duration. Excellent. And now let's make some conditions. And I'm actually going to have two conditions here. One is I want to go to idle if the speed is less than 0.01 and is jumping is false. So if I'm no longer jumping and the speed is less than, then I want to go to idle. Okay, and then let's make one more transition from jump to run. Choose our transition. No exit time, turn off the duration. Okay, so speed is greater than 0.01, so I'm moving, and is jumping is false, then I'm in player run. So this is a very simple little transition diagram of what's going on. Notice that I'm going to have to connect these parameters, speed and is jumping, to the code, and we'll do that in the next video. So if you ran this right now, really all you get is the idle because the code is not transitioning those parameters. So and you'll notice it gets played up here over and over and over. You can kind of watch which one you're in. All right, we will see you in the next video.